I'm pretty sure if you ask a ton of heated rivalry fans at what point Shane and Ilya's relationship shifted from them just casually having sex whenever they are able to be in each other's orbit into becoming so much more, majority of them would probably pinpoint the moment when a high on pain med Shane Hollander did his "Will you come to my cottage this summer?" request. And whilst I do think that that moment most certainly counted, and I will go into a bit more details later on in this video, I will like to highlight the little moments that came before, the subtle way in which the narrative was already screaming that what was happening with Shane and Ilya was so much more, and that they were both making the active choice to further things along that went beyond just mutual smiles. Because let's be real, it never was just fucking for these two from the start. But it did take them a while to realize that it was more than fucking. But before they came to that realization, the signs were already there. And yes, I will like to talk about that. Now, before I get into the rest of the video, I would like to shout out La Echo, who did make a video request for me to talk about one of the crucial ways slash points that the show was able to make it clear that Shane and Ilya were not just fuck buddies anymore, i.e., their progression from merely sending texts to actually making phone calls. I already had the semblance of a video idea, but that comment definitely brought it all together for me as I realized that disparate actions and moments that I'd initially thought existed in isolation from each other actually all fit perfectly together in the context of this video, which you are now getting. And of course, if I miss any instances and fail to mention them in the video, please let me know in the comments so that we can all chat about it and I can start my upteenth rewatch of this show so I can catch it all for research purposes, of course. But once again, thanks La Echo, and a big thank you as well to my lovely patrons and YouTube members whose support have been instrumental in helping me continue to make content, especially since I started doing this full time at the start of last year, which was the last time I was in paid employment. And a special shout out to Lena, Sherry, and Holly for their extra support. You get all the hearts and kisses to mwah. If you too would like to support me on Patreon or become a YouTube member to enjoy certain perks, maybe even get a shout out, the link to do so is in the description bar. Now, like I said at the start of this video, the cottage is a pivotal point for the change in Shane and Ilya's relationship. And I will address that in a bit. What I want to do, however, is highlight the moment of change in more of a chronological order as far as the episode count is concerned, as you can also see at which point things had started slowly to change for the boys. Because whilst my knee jerk reaction was to immediately think of the tuna melt scene as what kickstarted things, I think it goes a little bit earlier than that, specifically to Ilya winning the Stanley Cup whilst playing for Boston. Because in that moment, it's established that even while surrounded by his own teammates, Shane is able to feel pride at and for Ilya winning the cup. He knows more than anyone else in that moment what Ilya has been able to prove. That the chance taken on him wasn't in vain, that he's able to show the world that he really is one of the best in the league. I mean, remember, those were Shane's own words, even whilst his teammates objected and said Shane is the best. He still believes that Ilya can be considered the best as well. Sure, he at that point has no idea that Ilya is offering his win to his mother, that all of this is to thump his nose at his father's expectations of when that win would have come. But they were together at that press conference, singularly bearing on their own shoulders the expectation that is the responsibility to turn their teams, their failing teams at that point, into major powerhouses, to turn the Raiders and the Metros into dynasties. That's what they both set out for. The question they had to answer when that reporter gave that meandering question that Ilya couldn't really understand and properly translate, and Shane stepped in to help. No one else knows quite what that burden feels like but the two of them. And the pride we see in Shane's eyes when Ilya lifts the cup confirms that. The same as the pride we see in Ilya's eyes when it's his turn to be alone in his home and he gets to watch Shane lift the cup for the first time as well. It is clear that at that point, that even if it's in the privacy of their own homes or the little bit of space that they're able to carve for themselves when no one else can tell their deepest thoughts, Ilya and Shane would always be happy for the other's accomplishments. Rivals who are fucking each other, they might be, but rivals who root for and get the other like no one else can is what they are. And the moment Shane has that little smile that's outside of them being in each other's presence, when it's about an accomplishment that is all Ilya's, that was a slight shift in the moment right there. And then we enter the tuna melt scene, which I already have a comprehensive video on that if you want to check it out. But from the moment after they're done having sex and Shane is about to leave, which is the usual practice, they meet the fuck, they part ways until the next time. But then Ilya makes him the offer for him to stay. We get another shift because that is the point where there's the call for them to step out of their usual. And it is what they then carry forward in all their interactions that follow after that. Like, yes, Ilya is taking a big step by asking Shane to stay over in his apartment, something that they've never done. But Shane is hesitant. He brings up Aiden, who in the context does not simply represent Aiden himself alone, but it is a subtle way of pointing out that the others who would have a vested interest in them being together, the outside that up until that point they saw no need to bring them into their thing because he and Ilya at that point didn't have a thing. What they had was quick and easy, and when they both got off, one of them left. But in that moment, Ilya is hinting that he wants more and that Shane doesn't need to think, doesn't need to care as much about what others think. Hayden isn't his mother after all. Nobody but them get to decide what they want. And what they both want in that moment is to spend more time together, even though that is out of the norm for the both of them. It is as much Ilya extending the offer in that moment as it is Shane accepting it. And it's a dance that they continue with Ilya offering Shane the ginger ale, indicating that he's noticed what Shane always wants and went out of his way to have it stocked in his home so Shane would feel comfortable and always welcome in his home. He then follows it up with the offer to make Shane a tuna melt, something that is clearly not aligned with Shane's macrobiotic diet. And even though Shane already has the one thing that is allowed himself as his cheat for said diet, i.e., the ginger ale, he accepts Ilya's offer to feed him, going out of his comfort zone because, again, it is Ilya offering. It's a way of him subtly accepting that. And then everything comes to a head with Ilya calling Shane by his first name, which is a first, since their interactions, as at that point, has always centered them only addressing each other by their last name. Like, sure, it's a hockey thing to address teammates and opponents by said last names, but Shane and Ilya use that form of address as another barrier to draw a clear line between them about how their fucking has always centered their lives as hockey players and their rivalries. Nothing beyond that. Once again, it's not a coincidence that the only times they hook up is clearly designated by the match times assigned to their games. So their encounters have always been around their play, and that has also bled into their address of each other as they do on the ice and off of it until Ilya whispers Shane's name as he comes and Shane does the same. And now everything has changed and shifted. Clearly, there is no hiding, no passing it off as it being that there isn't a big deal because it clearly is. And Shane panics and bolts. And then we have the 2017 All Stars game, specifically events prior to it and during the game as well, which sees yet another shift in their relationship. It is when their friendship, the fondness that they have for each other, actually bleeds through their interactions even before they launched said friendship or thought of it as part of the grand plan, which Shane details on a step by step process to them being publicly together when they end up at the cottage. I think it says a lot that all the All Stars game that came prior to that one, the league had always pitched Shane and Ilya as rivals, having them on opposing teams to fan the flames of the narrative that they couldn't stand each other. It is what makes the one in 2017 different. Like at that point, the very universe itself recognized the shift that was happening in their relationship, because for the first time ever since their rookie season, the league put them on the same team, having them work together as teammates for the game. And whilst the expectations from the other players was that they would not get along, as seen from Carter Vaughn's delight at them apparently sitting together and making nice, what we instead get is a shift where Shane is open about talking with and being friendly with Ilya, with no attempt to hide it, no need to corner him in some space with zero prying eyes. Instead, they get to pull one over everyone else by showing off their friendship, whether it is Ilya's demand that Shane settle the debt he owes the kids who beat him in the swimming race, or when they're on the ice working perfectly together, in sync with Ilya giving up center so that he can play wing for Shane. And when his assist nets Shane a goal, Ilya is just as exuberant in his celebration. Now, I know that some parts of the fandom believe that this should have immediately given away the gig that Shane and Ilya are lovers, with that kiss on the side of his helmet that has been immortalized by the fandom everywhere. But hockey celebrations can and have gotten quite touchy-feely in the past, with straight players being that affectionate with their teammates. So whilst it didn't announce to the world that these two were lovers, except maybe a subsection of hockey fans in that universe who might have been theorizing like we did when we watched the show, but it definitely revealed yet another aspect to their relationship to the wider world, and that is that Shane and Ilya are friends. I like to think that Shane's suggestion about how he and Ilya would soft launch their friendship before his move to Ottawa was probably birthed in his subconscious at this particular All Stars game, even if he didn't realize it at the time. And then there's the post game and a little moment that I've noticed that not a lot of people mention or caught, even though I believe that what it's a small thing, it matters in the larger scheme of things. After the All Stars game, Ilya joins Shane at a spot by the beach and confirms that Shane and Rose Landry really aren't compatible. And after the soft moment of Ilya's hands reaching across the sand for Shane, Shane asks what room Ilya is in, and I sighed. Like I said, it seems like such a small moment, practically inconsequential in the grand scheme of things. But for me, it ties into the larger theme of Shane at that point of the story being more proactive in showing that he does really want this. What this is, remember, they don't really define it as such until they get to the cottage, but he wants it with Ilya. Prior to this moment, throughout the episodes we had gotten thus far, Shane has never once taken the initiative in all their many hookups to ask what Ilya's room number is. It's always been either Ilya asking Shane outright what his room number is, 1410, or Ilya informing Shane what his own room number is, 1221, or the penthouse. This is the first time when it was Shane asking, and I repeat, it might seem small, but it felt very significant to me because it showed clearly that Shane had arrived at the point in their relationship where he too was ready to be the one to take the initiative, the step for them to be together. It is why he isn't the anxious ball of energy, terrified of being seen outside Ilya's hotel room when he arrives. Like, don't get me wrong, he still has his hands folded and clenched into fists, and we know he's nervous because he's about to come out to Ilya and let him know that he too wants more after apologizing for running off at first, of course. But the nervousness is about the conversation that they're about to have, not the usual terror of the potential of him being spotted outside Ilya's room. And because him asking Ilya for his room number was meant to indicate that Itu was ready to take that step forward and meet Ilya and trying for more. It is why that's the scene where we then get Ilya being emotionally vulnerable about events at home, his mother's death, his father's illness, his brother's indifference, and his fears about losing his home. Ilya gets to be emotionally vulnerable in that moment because by asking one simple question, Shane has confirmed that he's just as ready emotionally to be present and to take some initiative in them being together. And he maintains this 2 weeks later in their Montreal Boston game when Ilya texts him to suggest that they hook up before their game. Once again, it's a little thing, but it speaks to such a fundamental shift because for the first time since they started hooking up, Shane breaks his own fundamental rule of them not having sex before the game and agrees after Ilya asks him to come over. Like, they have the back and forth. Shane reminds Ilya that they don't do this. They don't see each other before their game. I mean, this is the Shane Hollander who the first time he and Ilya had penetrative sex for the first time, was slightly miffed and very aroused when he tackles Ilya after their game together to ask him what on earth he was thinking, sexting him before their game. And now, not even sexting, but full on fucking. And he's there in Ilya's apartment, breaking yet another first that neither of them have ever done, which of course is more heart wrenching when you remember that if they had waited until after the game, they probably wouldn't have had that moment of bliss and teasing each other afterwards, because that is when Alexei calls to let Ilya know that their father was dead. Which then brings me to Laeko's comment about how we see an even bigger change slash shift in how Ilya and Shane interact and communicate at this point, because they shift from only text messages to phone calls. Shane, concerned, not wanting Ilya to be alone with the whole situation, calls Ilya for the first time, and upon reaching his answering machine, which it doesn't leave a message on, mind you, because in that moment it's become a desire, an itch to hear Ilya's voice, to provide comfort to him in whatever way he can. And a machine just won't cut it. And then Ilya calls Shane, needing the normalcy that Shane brings, the calm he gets to experience and enjoy whilst listening to Shane's voice, the way in which talking with Shane, not chatting or texting, but actually hearing his voice, seeing his freckles and the cute reading glasses that he gets to see to his delight, and everything shifts yet again. Throughout the entirety of Ilya's stay in Russia, as he deals with his remaining family and laying his father to rest with the cold silence of his grief and the angry words that Alexei pulls from him, the person whose words center him, who gives him that comfort he needs, who lets him be vulnerable in the moment, who gets to let him see that not all silence is oppressive. Some of them is filled with love and care, holding space whilst you share your innermost thoughts in a language that they do not understand or speak, but receive nonetheless because you need them there. The person who does all of that for him is Shane. So, of course, it comes as no surprise that when he does end up spilling his guts and giving voice to his feelings, his true feelings for Shane for the first time, is via a phone call with Shane's breath to his ear. It's beautiful. And then, of course, there's the invitation to the cottage. Now, just like with the tuna melt scene, I also have a video where I talk extensively about the relevance of the cottage and how it serves as Shane's response to Ilya's tuna melt. So I'm not going to go into much details on that, but I do think it is important to point out that while Scott kissing Kip after he won the Stanley Cup was important and absolutely crucial to Shane and Ilya taking the plunge on their own relationship, we should all still keep it in mind that Shane's invitation to the cottage came first. He had already set the groundwork to create a space where he and Ilya could just be, even before the Scott and Cape kiss, and that was just as important and just as necessary. But of course, these are just my thoughts. I would, as always, love to hear yours. Whether or not you agree with me, please share them in the comments. Like this video, however, if you've watched this far and haven't done so yet, but enjoyed anything of what I had to say, share it so others can find my channel as well. Or you can check out my gaming or ASMR channel if they sound like something you might potentially possibly be interested in. I have them both linked in the description bar. I will see you tomorrow with a new video. Until then, do remember, obsessing over the things you love, perfectly valid coping mechanism.